Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain and welcome to the Girl Meets World Review. Last time, we discussed alter egos and internet identities as we met Jexica. This time around, we continue with the theme of change as the main cast continues to be tested in various ways during their first year of high school. Spoiler alert now, you know the drill. With all that said, let's dive into Girl Meets Permanent Record. We start things off in Spanish class, where Maya receives an A, but Riley gets a D. At this point, we all have a pretty good idea of how both characters function as students, so this reality presents a pleasant surprise for Maya and a daunting challenge for Riley. This brings in the conversation about permanent records and how colleges only look at what you do in high school to determine whether or not you're a good student. And that's true, sort of, but the episode does address that point later. So Maya's getting the A's and the praise, while Riley feels ashamed by her grade. This leads to Mr. Matthews trying to smooth things over with the Spanish teacher, which I can understand him trying to do to some degree, but with him being a teacher as well, he should know better, and many episodes prior to this proves that he does. Trying to tell a teacher their test was too hard when Maya got an A without cheating comes off as a pretty weak argument, and more importantly, it shifts the blame away from the student that got the D in the first place, which I have a problem with. Thankfully, this episode intelligently realizes that the Spanish teacher is the correct one in this case, and it drives Riley to work a bit harder to become the good student she always thought herself to be. But, just before that, we get two parallels to the situation Riley and Maya are in. First, in the form of Lucas and Zay, who have now switched roles as baseball players, with Zay being the all-star, and again with Farkle and Smackle. The Zay-Lucas parallel makes some sense, but the Farkle-Smackle one doesn't as much, and here's why. Utilizing the realm of high school to make Zay and Maya look more successful than Lucas and Riley makes some sense, but it works because they are very different people both physically and mentally. Smackle is essentially a female version of Farkle, and Smackle has legitimately beat Farkle out in a number of intellectual engagements prior to this point, so the comparisons to the first two situations fall a bit flat. I love that Riley works harder in response to her situation for one very specific reason. We already know that Riley is more than willing to stand up for her friends and be the most agreeable one in the group, but outside of Girl Meets Rara, she hasn't had too many chances to stand up for herself, and she does here. She gets a bad grade, and even though Corey tries to intervene, she realizes on her own that getting a better grade depends on her ability to work harder than she did in middle school because, as we know, things get harder the older you get. Even though Topanga told her to study a bit more, nobody told her to study all night. I build this point up not just because I love seeing people work hard, but because I love seeing this side of Riley, the side of Riley that pushes through challenges and doesn't succumb to them, and that's powerful. Getting back to the plot, the Spanish teacher informs Riley that she won't be giving extra credit or a makeup test. I like this teacher already because you can really tell that she's not messing around, and she's set on preparing her students for the much harder times that lay ahead by not treating them like children now. And, to adapt, just as Riley and Farkle talk about a little later, it's all about raising your level and being better than you were, something touched upon during the Girl Meets High School season premiere, but given an academic form here. So the episode closes with our cast in the classroom, with a better understanding that what we are now doesn't define who we'll be later, and something like getting a D, doing poorly in baseball, or even getting lower grades than your girlfriend are all things that can be overcome with time, if you're willing to put in the work to become someone better than you used to be. And that's Girl Meets Permanent Record. I'd call it good, but I would hesitate to call it greater than that. It's undoubtedly an important episode, but one that felt like it was still trying to figure out what it wanted to teach halfway through, until finally landing on something pretty solid. I can understand that balancing being a teacher and a parent must be a tough thing to juggle, but I've never seen Mr. Matthews so wrong about a situation directly involving education. While he doesn't outright admit he was wrong in trying to talk the Spanish teacher into giving Riley a makeup test, you do get the feeling that through his words later, he understands why his position wasn't the correct one this time. This is one of those episodes where it felt like there was too many parallels and too many attempts to have the other cast members be a part of the narrative in a meaningful way, even if the ways and means don't make too much sense. Maya lives in a Spanish-speaking community. That's part of why she does well in class, but the parallels they tried to create with Zay and Smackle being so much better than their counterparts doesn't match up, because Zay wouldn't all of a sudden become a better baseball player than Lucas. Sports ain't Spanish class, it doesn't work like that. And the Farkle-Smackle competition of sorts is something they've already established back in Season 1 and doesn't really fit into the narrative cleanly here. Also, all their talk of permanent records in colleges seems a bit premature. Take it from a guy who's been to and worked for a college when I say they care way more about how you've worked through high school than any particular year of high school, although junior year is the one year that they really focus on the most, I would say. But having said that, the talks being premature can also be seen as a positive, since raising your level of educational focus now can only help you down the road. But make no mistake, there's a lot that works about this episode too. The fact that we're returning to a version of Riley that pushes herself and works hard for what she wants is exactly what made Girl Meets Rara such a great episode. And while Riley's often touched upon issues with what others think of her are arguably more important, it's great to see this show balance out that by reminding us that when Riley isn't dressing up in silly wigs, she also has the potential to achieve a great deal more than her heavily whimsical demeanor might imply. The Spanish teacher also kills it in her role, and brings back memories of the firm but fair Mr. Feeney, who always looked to challenge his students and never let them take the easy way out. All in all, this episode works on a number of levels, but primarily in the later stages, while the early parts feel like a lot of moving parts for no real reason other than to make everyone in the cast feel included, even if the methodology of inclusion is flimsy at best. This episode has its fun moments, although a lot less so than in most episodes, but that's okay, since the topic is more serious. The Spanish teacher conveys rare poise, presence, and commitment to her craft in a way only the middle school English teacher has ever reached as far as side teachers go, and we get an episode where Riley can focus on being a better version of herself instead of trying to appease other people or keeping her friends together, which, again, are both great traits of hers, but not the only traits, and that's what works best about this episode. But I would just call it a good episode, more or less on par with the previous two, all things considered. Season 3 so far has been great by the standards of your everyday Disney show, but we all know that Girl Meets World is so much more than that, and that's why I'm holding it to a higher standard. Some of you might disagree and really love this season so far, or even this episode specifically, and I can certainly understand why. But for me, I'm anxiously waiting for Season 3 to deliver an episode that's not just good, not just great, but truly special. I don't think that episode has come quite yet, but I know that it will. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and throw down a like, sub for more, and share it all over social media. And don't forget to follow the Disney Brain on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Links down below. The coming days will bring the review for the Liv and Maddie season finale, as well as the Zapped DCOM review, and a brand new top video, where we dive into the top 10 best DCOM songs. So, plenty to look forward to. Until then.
Buen trabajo. Ooh, wait, what's that in English?
An A is an A wherever you go.
Yay! That is